Welcome along. Today I'm talking about mandatory COVID vaccinations in the workplace. So back in January 2021, I wrote a blog and recorded a video about Pimlico Plumber's no jab, no job policy and discussed whether I thought it was a reasonable and lawful policy to introduce. Since then, we've seen a number of high-profile companies dictate to their employees that to return to the office, they will need to be double jabbed. The government, well, they believe that many firms will say it's a good idea, of course. And we've seen a number of large corporates like Facebook, Google, and even law firms like the US law firm Morrison & Foerster requiring staff to have had 2 vaccinations before they return to the office in the next week or 2. And according to the Times last week, 1 in 4 bosses will demand on-premises staff to have been double jabbed before they return. We've also seen the UK government mandate vaccinations for care home workers. I have a blog about that. So my question is, has the legal position changed at all since January? And the answer is yes, it probably has shifted. In my previous blog, I wrote about the Equality Act and whether mandatory vaccine policies would be in breach of it. I also mentioned the Human Rights Act and the right to private life, and I thought that that might be the trump card. However, a recent European Court of Human Rights ruling has demonstrated that there is a possibility that the courts would rule a mandatory COVID vaccination policy to be lawful. So the judgement in Vavřička and others against the Czech Republic earlier in the year has attracted some attention, and it's an insight in how the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, might consider mandatory vaccination policies for COVID if it were to be asked to decide upon them. So this case is one from the Czech Republic, and the government there sought to introduce a compulsory vaccine programme requiring children to be vaccinated against 9 diseases. Financial penalties were imposed on the parents for non-compliance, and those children who had not been fully vaccinated were banned from attending preschool. After parents were fined, 6 individuals argued that the mandatory vaccinations were a breach of their human rights, and in particular Article 8, a right to private life, and Article 9, a right to freedom of thought and religion. So the European Court on Human Rights found that the Czech's national vaccination programme did interfere with the claimant's right to a private life. However, the court also decided that the interference was justified as a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. It said that the relevant vaccinations were known to be safe and effective. It said that the fines were not excessive, and non-vaccinated children were not prevented from attending school once they'd reached the compulsory school age. It was only the preschool kids. The court also said that the Czech Republic, as a government, had a legitimate aim in its desire to protect its population against serious disease. So where does that leave us here in the UK? It's clear, in my view, that it may be possible for an employer to require its employees to be fully vaccinated, and that this may not contravene the European Convention on Human Rights or the Human Rights Act here in the UK. However, the decision doesn't give the green light for mandatory vaccines, as previously talked about, but it does give us an insight into how the courts in the UK may consider things. The question would be, is a mandatory vaccination policy a justified and proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim? Some advocates for the vaccine would argue it's the best way of stopping COVID and protecting employees and others in the workplace. And whether you agree is immaterial, as ultimately it's the judges that decide things like this. For now, I maintain the view that employers should proceed carefully with any plans to require all workers to be vaccinated. They should allow opt-outs for those who feel strongly against it, those who have strong religious beliefs. And dismissing somebody for failing to take a vaccine is really risky in my view. There's some other issues which need to be considered from a data protection point of view. Questions like whether holding the sensitive personal data on vaccination status is covered in your data protection policies, whether the employee has consented to you holding or storing that data. And similarly, if a company wanted to adopt a present your COVID pass situation, we need to consider the data protection things for there too. So that's me, Stephen Mather, solicitor, your business lawyer. Thank you for watching.